Raheem Morris got fired. Terry Fontenot also let go, the GM. But other movement that happened yesterday, Kevin Stefanski of the Cleveland Browns fired after 6 seasons and a 5-12 finish, and a lot of chatter about the quarterbacks and their reps during training camp and beyond. Pete Carroll was fired, one and done in Las Vegas. Oh, I should also say Andrew Berry is staying on in Cleveland. Pete Carroll fired. Spytech stays. GM stays. There's a lot of that going on in the league. A lot of coaches fired, a lot of GMs hanging on, which is a whole nother discussion. But it's I'm very curious about some of these. It's like, hey, I thought you guys were coming in together on this. Like, why is also one guy getting scapegoated? Another one, Jonathan Gannon, dismissed after 3 seasons, which I knew was going to be a total rebuild, but it's still a barren roster and a very hurt roster. Doesn't matter. GM's still there. I already mentioned Raheem Morris. And then on top of it, a couple coordinator moves. Cliff Kingsbury left the Commanders. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of smoke coming out about it. I do want to talk with you about that. They also fired Joe Witt Jr., the defensive coordinator there. So both coordinators gone in Washington after a season from hell. And the Cowboys fire defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, which was to be expected. I think that one doesn't shock anybody. So maybe he gets a little golden parachute out of it. Matt, it's a lot of seats open right now. Not a lot of candidates. I've been trying to make short lists of interesting candidates, and I'm just like, I guess, maybe. But any of these that you want to take a stab at, any of these you want that I think are interesting or think could be interesting to find a candidate, maybe the best spot of these ones that have an open chair. A lot of these teams need quarterbacks as well, and it's not a great quarterback offseason. So any of these interest you, Matt, that you want to talk about or just think that are a little juicy to talk about?
Yeah, like, I don't know that any of them are really surprising. To be honest, I think all of them are there's a few of them. I think, Raheem Morris in Atlanta, Jonathan Gannon in Arizona, I probably could have gone either way. I think you could justify staying, you could justify going, but I think the Gannon one in particular is it's tough because they just they never got better. They got worse. And I know that their injuries are obviously a big problem there. But as much as we talked about, the production of the offense once Jacoby Brissett took over, he dropped back 548 times from week 6 on. That was 8.5 more dropbacks per game than Caleb Williams, who was second in that same span. It was basically just a scam because they were always in negative game script for that team because the defense was eroding. The run game completely fell apart. So I do understand the injury part of it, but they just never got any better. So to me, that was maybe the one that I think I wasn't sure which way they'd go, but I kind of understand, like, look, we're moving on from the quarterback. We're just kind of completely wiping the slate clean here. And I do understand that. I think maybe the Kingsbury one is the biggest I think people might find that the most surprising because it was less than 365 days ago that this team was in the NFC Championship. And now they have let go of both of their coordinators. And, maybe it's sort of kind of being framed as a mutual decision by Cliff and the organization. And I do think that maybe Cliff feels he could get a better job elsewhere. He could even be a head coach. Like, that's something that I've been saying for a few months now, that there are guys who are offensive coordinators for their teams that the fan base probably wants to fire, and yet they might end up being head coaching candidates because of just the state of this cycle. I mean, you said it, like, everybody needs, a lot of teams need new, if not head coaches, new offensive architects or a new quarterback or offensive line help. And it's not a great offseason for any of those three. So we were talking about it before the show. There's going to be a lot of interesting sell jobs from front offices and team decision makers. Like, oh, no, trust us. This is totally going to work out. And 6 weeks into the season, we're going to know it did not work out and was never going to work out. So it'll be really fascinating to see how those come together. But yeah, of all these, the one that maybe surprises me the most, or I'm not that shocked by it and I have a lot of thoughts about it, is just the Cliff Kingsbury thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would even say, like, just the short list of coaches, like, yeah, there's not a lot of quarterbacks available in this draft. It might be a 1 quarterback class, depending. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss, who was super interesting day 2 guy, he's going back to school, got the waiver. Dante Moore didn't have hasn't looked like overwhelmingly great in the playoffs. So it looks like a 1 QB class in the first round at the very least with Fernando Mendoza. I'm like scouring trying to find interesting names. There's some interesting like round 3 guys, some round 4 guys that might sneak up. Drew Allers got tools from Penn State. Garrett Nussmeier was a guy I was high on. He battled injuries, and LSU had a season from hell as well. But again, he's older and smaller. Cade Klubnik, I'm not super high on. So like, again, I'm just listing all those off because it's like, all right, let's look at the free agents. Let's look at the vets. Daniel Jones coming off an Achilles. Like you can maybe trade for Mac Jones. Spoilers, I might talk about him in a little bit. There's just a lot of important positions that need to be filled, of course, on every team, but there's just not a lot of people to fill those spots. Like, yeah, I know you can get creative and you can find guys, but the quarterback one is just really like, I don't know. There's a lot of QB 28s out there. It's funny with the Browns, though, they don't need just a quarterback. They need offensive line. They need receiver help. The defense still, you need to keep adding to the defense. It's just looking at them. Stefanski, probably his name goes to the top of the available candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would much rather hire him than some of these other names that are getting floated out there. Matt Nagy, like way much rather go for Stefanski. That's another thing with the Matt Nagy thing. And I do not know Matt Nagy or anything, but just looking as an outsider and you're looking at context of resume, all right, what is his selling point? That he had a good defense with the Bears. That was obviously Vic Fangio and Khalil Mack. His team fell apart. His quarterbacks got worse. The offenses got worse under his watch. And then he goes back to Kansas City and it's like been the worst of the Mahomes offenses. I don't know what the selling point for him is, but other than I know the GM in Tennessee, like that's really all that I'm hearing from there. But I mean, Brian Flores is an interesting name. His name was kind of more or less blackballed, it seemed like, because he was suing the league. But I think that a lot of owners and GMs are going, whoa, that was in the past. And, we have to give him, he has experience coaching. He wanted Justin Herbert. We like him, right? Like, I saw his name getting floated with the Raiders, which actually I would be really interested in, especially if they bring in Mendoza, Brian Flores on top. I saw Brian Dable as the rumored offensive coordinator name, which I'm not so high on, but I do like a little bit of that makeup. I know it's just, it's not, especially when the interesting college names are sticking around. It's not like Marcus Freeman took his name out. I don't see Signetti going anywhere. He's in the 60s anyway, from Indiana. So it's just, again, Dan Lanning, I don't know, doesn't have an NFL experience. So just thinking of college names as well. It's just, and I think all these teams, they need a lot. It's not like I go in, like even the Falcons are interesting because they have some weapons. As far as Drake London, Bijan Robinson, who knows with Kyle Pitts, but they also are kind of cap strapped. They don't have their first round pick. That's not super appealing. It is a fresh slate. At least you're going to get a lot of decisions on that. Matt Ryan is basically appointed as football czar, it seems like.
He's interviewing today for a job that they created for him, which is hilarious. he's interviewing for president of football operations, which is again,
is that what the title is?
Yes, it's a new position that the Atlanta Falcons have created, and it only was created when rumors circulated that they wanted to give the job to Matt Ryan. So hilarious. But that happens in the corporate world. I've definitely had jobs before where it's like, all right, we interviewed you, now you have to apply for the job online. It's like, wait, but does that mean I thought you said you were giving me the job? So it's not crazy unheard of, but it is a thing that's happening.
It's happened to me my first job as a coach with the Raiders. They had the role, they changed the role. And it was just because of that. They just created a new thing. And I was just like, sweet. Like, because they're like, well, we can't just have this. We already have assistant quarterback coach. So we need this. And so they just give me some like offensive assistant title that they just made up. But no, that's so true though. Like I was curious because they said they moved out Rich McKay, it's been a long time coming. And then they promoted, I think, someone else as team president. And then I was like, okay, so team president, or not that, GM, not that. So it's director of football operations. That's what the title is going to be. I just put as football czar, head of football, football decision making. But it's funny because people are already starting trying to connect the dots and saying like, okay, he went to Boston College. He was teammates with Brian Flores. He was teammates with Ryan Poles, who his assistant Ian Cunningham is getting some interest from the GM spots. But because he knows Poles, that might help him out. I just think that stuff's really funny, trying to connect the dots as opposed to just resume and what you can show in interviews and everything. And also Matt Ryan is saying that he wants to work in media still as he does this job. He wants to do the Tom Brady. And then there's Troy Aikman, who's working Monday Night Football, that also says that he's going to still work on Monday Night Football. He's helping with the Dolphins. And I think the Dolphins still have Dan Marino on the payroll to help out and give consulting jobs. So I don't know. This is, I guess, the new thing. Just bringing back old quarterbacks, make everyone feel good. So no one gets mad at them. Like everyone just goes, no one's mad at John Elway in Denver. Everyone's just like, yeah. His time was past for there. Maybe that's what it is. Just like a little human meat shield with all of that. But just to wrap this up, I would say that the Cliff Kingsbury thing is interesting to me because he had earned my respect. It's not my perfect offense. It's not exactly how I would design an offense. A little too much tempo for me, a little too spread out at times. Did think that he adjusted a little bit better in Washington than he ever did in Arizona. And the run game has always been good no matter where he's been. That's interesting to me. But also the pairing with Jane Daniels made a lot of sense. Like that was a great way to lift the floor and get him going into the NFL. And they're saying the word coming out that him and DQ butted heads. DQ wants Dan Quinn wants more of maybe a traditional offense. And then in my head, I'm hearing Shanahan offense because now you got Adam Peters making decisions, who's just basically a 49ers nut. If you play for the 49ers or coach for the 49ers, he's interested in you. So look for a Kubiak or something. But also just, I don't know. I think Jaden's accurate enough and throws well on the move, but he also tries to scramble as much as possible. Like trying to make him more traditional. I just don't know. I want to see what that looks like. I think this was the best offense for him, at least this stage in his career. So curious what the next steps as they move on from that. But yeah, any of these spots that if you had to rank them, what would be your number one spot? Opening, I should say. It's not like a amazing group, but I'm just curious.
No. I think Cleveland is poisoned. I think that Atlanta is just really tough. No first round pick.
It's hard.
How excited are you about? By the way, is anybody excited about Michael Penix except the two guys that they just kicked out the door?
Right.
He's going to be 26 years old this offseason, third reconstructed ACL, and I know about as much about how good he is as an NFL quarterback now as I did, a year ago. So that's just a really tough one. They're one where I don't think either of the two quarterbacks who took snaps from them this year are going to start week one. And we're talking about a team without a first round pick and all these questions at quarterback this year. That's just really tough. I think Arizona, you can squint at it and be interesting. And I do think that I'm ready to see like a new offensive vision for that particular roster.
Yeah.
I think the best opening might be the Raiders. And I think the Raiders were abhorrent. I thought the product was terrible this year. And I said it a lot on this show very often. And yet I kind of like Spy Tech. I think Brady is at least, I know that he's getting a lot of crap for the way this has gone this year. That's fine.
He's going to be more engaged.
Yeah, he's going to be more engaged, and it's okay if you don't hit a home run on your first swing. It's fine. Like it's a job that I think you need to learn a little bit here. I'm still interested in that. And regardless, like they have the first overall pick. If this is a one quarterback draft, guess what? Ain't nobody fighting you for that one quarterback. So I do think that's really a good setup there. And they have some young talent. They have Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. They have Ashton Genty, of course. And I still think that there are some other young, intriguing players that they took in this draft that they can obviously sit here and say, hey, the coaching staff did not even try to maximize these guys. So I think that this whole setup this year for the Raiders, Pete Carroll, forced marriage with Spy Tech, forced marriage with Chip Kelly. It was just way too many cooks in the kitchen. It's a fascinating, what I said about the Raiders, it's like a fascinating thing to talk about in the offseason, and then you get into the real games and the product is abhorrent. I think there's a chance that if they just get everybody like just rowing in the same stream here, rowing in the same direction, I think that we can actually get a pretty, I don't know, I want to say good football team here, but I think we can get something going.
Something to build off of, that's really what it is. I think between the Raiders and the Cardinals, I've never been more O-line coach pilled than what happened with those two teams. And like, I've always have said that, super important. I think the public fan, the national fan, the general fan has realized that as much more as well. But I think even those two teams and just their decisions led to a lot of trickle down, especially in the offense. Pete having his son as the O-line coach, not changing that at all. And then in Arizona, letting Clayton Adams go, which I get. The Cowboys gave Clayton Adams a title bump and probably a lot of money. That's what the underrated thing with Jerry Jones is, that he pays his coordinators a lot. Usually the Cowboys assistant coaches are the highest paid assistant coaches in the NFL. Really hard to pass up. So I get all that. But also the Falcons too, just a kind of closing thought. They modified the deal with Kirk Cousins. So they set up March 13th as the date to make a decision on the QB's future with the franchise. So he could go back to Atlanta, but now he might be gone. They're a mess. A year and a half ago, whatever it was, less than 2 years ago, they gave a quarterback $100 million and they draft another one in the top 10, and they still have a question mark at the position.
Terrible.
That's a lot of resources for question marks, man. But no, we're going to talk more and more about these teams. I think some of these teams that are in no man's land are actually even more interesting than some of the teams in the playoffs. I think the Dolphins are one of the most interesting teams to me. They haven't fired their coach or anything, but one of the most interesting teams to me because of the decisions they could possibly make. Same with these teams as well. Commanders have had great highs under Dan Quinn and just a lot of lows this past year. I want to see who they bring in. Again, I think it's going to be a Shanahan disciple just because of who the GM is and what Dan Quinn has had success under, but who knows? Maybe he gets creative with it, but we'll see.